Welcome to Ask a Lawyer with attorney Joey Franks at the Franks Law Firm in Ridgeland, Mississippi. Each week, Joey answers your questions about the law and how it affects you.
What happens if I refuse a DUI breath test in Mississippi?
Unfortunately, that sets off a chain of events if you refuse a breath test in Mississippi that will usually ultimately lead to suspension of a driver's license for 90 days automatically. That is just right out the gate. Normally, the Department of Public Safety will send out a letter to the address on your driver's license. They try to get it out within the first 30 days. And upon receiving that, you have 10 days to file a petition for what's called a breath test refusal hearing to determine whether or not you actually refused a breath test.
Can I be forced to take a test?
You cannot be forced to take a test on a standard stop. Now, if there's an accident and somebody's injured, at that point, then yes, they can go and get a warrant to have your blood drawn or force you to take a test at that point. But generally speaking, if you were just pulled over, at some random stop, or whether the officer says you changed lanes improperly, or whatever the case may be for the probable cause, they will often offer you what's called a portable breath test. And you can refuse it, and then the officer, if they decide to take it further, will take you to the station, in which case they will ask you again to take a breath test, but this one is on the big intoxilizer machine. If you refuse that test at that time, that is when you have refused a breath test, and you certainly have the option to refuse one.
Will it hurt my case?
Not necessarily. In fact, under certain circumstances, it may actually help your case, because we have the statutory DUI here in Mississippi that if you blow above a .08 blood alcohol content, BAC, then you are legally drunk by the laws of Mississippi. Now, granted, the officer has certain procedures they have to follow, and once somebody blows above that .08 or above, then we start looking into whether or not the procedure was followed properly. If an individual does not take that breath test, then they don't have that to go by. Therefore, they can't just say it was a statutory DUI. They have to go and prove what is called a common law DUI. They have to show somehow that you were physically impaired and while operating that automobile. And one of the most common ways of doing that is the field sobriety test that you always hear about people taking on the side of the road, the walk the line, hold one leg up, touch your nose. Those tests are what they'll revert to at that point, which can give you actually a stronger case in some circumstances.
So you could theoretically get out of a conviction by not taking a breath test?
Theoretically, yes, you could get out of a conviction by not taking the breath test, but that's only because the officer has to prove impairment by using something other than the breath test. If they cannot prove it by some other method, at that point, then you have a very good chance of being found not guilty of a DUI, because DUIs carry the same burden of proof, which is beyond a reasonable doubt in the state of Mississippi. So that is the state's burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you were operating an automobile while impaired on the state highways of Mississippi.
Thanks for listening to Ask a Lawyer with attorney Joey Franks at the Franks Law Firm in Ridgeland, Mississippi. Call attorney Franks for a free consultation at 601-773-7777. His website is thefrankslawfirm.com.